The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality restricted from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to instead. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man.
Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Nathan, otherwise known as Old Man Builds. Guys, we got an awesome show today. Liz is here. We got Joe. Everybody, dude, we did a pre-recorded session on Atlantis and it's absolutely amazing. One thing real quick, if you have any questions for Liz, we're going to do another sit down with her. So if you have any questions, just at the end of the stream, drop them in the comment section. I'll take a look at them, send them off to her, see if we can't get them answered. Anyway, with all that said, man, let's rock this out. Papa Bell, I want to say a special thank you for becoming a member, man. Appreciate it, brother.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this one.
So am I. All right, Liz, take us to Atlantis.
Okay, well, it's a big subject, so I probably should start with what I've been up to lately.
Okay.
Because I've been traveling the world looking for locations that I think might be relevant to Atlantis. So I spent a lot of time in Egypt.
Okay.
And I just got back 2 weeks ago. And so the whole thing started because as a small child, I would tell my mum that I came from somewhere else, that before I was with her, before I was born, I was somewhere else. And so my parents thought I was completely bonkers, and they told me so, but they were very lovely about it. They were lovely. It was a loving family that I came from. But they would say to me, don't say anything to anybody because you don't want people to think that you're too odd. And well, I guess they were right. I'm pretty odd. But anyway, so I lived a pretty normal life. I became a chartered accountant. And I did very well in my career. And then I retired because I'm old. And I was in the process of downsizing. And I was going through the garage with my mum, and I came across all my journals that I'd written from being very small about all the technology that I'd seen in these past life regression dream things, about all the places that I'd been. And I thought to myself, I'll just throw them out. And then I had a look through and I thought, maybe I won't throw them out. And then I thought, what on earth shall I do with them? So I started a YouTube channel. What else can you do?
It's a great idea.
That's awesome.
Way to put it to work.
My way through them slowly. And it seems that one of the things that people find particularly interesting is the technology that I've seen. And I think that's where our Venn diagram overlaps, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
I can tell from your channel that you're into technology and frequencies and vibration and things like that. And that's pretty much what I have seen in my dream regressions since being, a child. And I've got it all written down. And my journal, I've got just boxes of these journals. And I've only got 25% of the way through so far. So I've got a lot of work to do. But when I first started, I thought, well, I'm probably completely mad, but I'm going to do it anyway. See where it takes me. I didn't have much else to do. I was looking after my elderly mum. And so I started doing this. And the more I got into it, the more I thought, well, maybe I'm not as crazy as I think I might be. And and then I did my first visit to Egypt, and I saw things there that completely convinced me that I wasn't crazy. So once I could convince myself that I wasn't crazy about all this technology stuff and all these ancient places, then I thought, well, I may as well take it a bit further and see if other people think I'm still crazy. So anyway, so I started visiting ancient sites and documenting it and putting it on my channel and writing out all the details of these weird, I call them dream regressions for lack of a better word, but essentially when I go to sleep, I go back to this other life. And
yeah, it's almost like you're simultaneously experiencing it, right?
It is. And sometimes, you know, I wake up and it's just like I'm thinking about yesterday. It's as clear as a normal memory. And I do have ordinary dreams too. And ordinary dreams don't do that. You know, they're kind of fuzzy and you kind of think, oh, there was a bit of a boat there and there was a bit of this there. And so I have perfectly normal dreams as well. But these aren't like that. These are like a memory. Like just what I was doing yesterday, as I said. It's kind of weird, but because I've left it until I'm old, because I'm in my 60s now. I now wish I'd done this much sooner when I was younger and I had more time left.
Yeah.
But
we can find
I had a fabulous career, so you know, nobody wants a chartered accountant who has dreams of a past life. So
I do.
know, at least I
was gonna say, I mean, sounds more fun than not.
Yeah, I know.
So yeah,
I do have a question for you. When you first started getting these visions as a child and everything, at what point did it become apparent to you that this was Atlantis?
Oh, it was a lot longer. I was like maybe in my 30s when I started to think maybe this is Atlantis, because it wasn't called Atlantis. The place was called Tentau. And so I didn't really link it up until other people started pointing things out to me. And I didn't tell very many people about this because I only shared it with my closest friends and family. Because, I mean, even my family, much as they were very understanding about it, they really didn't like it very much.
It's hard to relate, right? You know, it's hard to make somebody understand something that they've never experienced themselves like that when it's so far out.
So we have like no idea what Atlantis actually looks like. So we've seen Egypt, we've seen hieroglyphs, we've seen that. But what does that Atlantis look like? Is it like a garden? What would you describe it as?
Well, it depends on which era you're talking about. I mean, we're talking about 30,000 years of existence. So in the first era, it was very green and there was a lot of pasture and there was a lot of animals running around, bulls, ostriches, other animals, elephants. And then as the eras progressed, and it got more and more built up, and then into the third era where it was so heavily overly populated, there wasn't enough resources to go around and it became a very unpleasant place. Then we're not looking at much greenery at all. So I actually left it during the middle of the second era, and I went to live in a place called Neath. And from Neath, that was my base. I would travel to other places, one that was in South America, and to Egypt, and to a place called Peri, which I have no idea where it is, but I have been looking for it. I'm thinking it might be in Morocco, but I'm not terribly sure. But there are a lot of places that I have the names for, and I have a very vivid image of them, but I have no idea where they are. There's one I think might be in Turkey, and I did go to Turkey in December last year, so just a couple of months ago, but I didn't quite get to the place where I think it might be. I think it might be somewhere in the Lake Van area, but I only got as far down as Hattusa, because I really wanted to see that green block of stone. Do you know the one I'm talking about? The mystical green stone of Hattusa?
I've seen that before. Yeah.
And it really is as amazing in person. I mean, it's more amazing in person. And I was with a friend of mine who's from Saudi Arabia, and she thinks I'm a little bit weird when it comes to things like this. And so as soon as I saw it, I was jumping around and I was so excited. I was the only person there other than the taxi driver who was with us and my friend. And I was like, yeah! And my friend's going, she's crazy. So people around me that think I'm completely bonkers, but yep. I hope you can understand my accent. I'm from New Zealand.
Oh, we're good.
Yeah, perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Oh, excellent. So yes, I think that Turkey is a very good candidate for one of the places that I'm looking for. But Egypt, because it's got so much of the old structures still intact, even though they're not that old, they're not like 10,000 years old, or some of them aren't. Some of them are, in my opinion. But
Okay.
I was telling the guys the other night that the pyramids were part of the university that was teaching practical applied
Yeah.
energetics.
Yeah.
So if you
Oh,
want to go into the different universities, I only covered the one.
So yes, Cam was the University of Applied Energy. So Perry was the University of Theoretical Energy, where they would work out what energy sources were available. But in Cam, it was how to use it, what best way to utilize the discoveries made at this other university called Perry. So there was a lot of experimentation done in Egypt, and I think you can see that there's still signs of it today, that a lot of deep shafts, a lot of things hidden underground. There's just so much that, to me, that was one of the things that reinforced to me that I wasn't crazy, because as soon as I walked into the Serapeum, I just knew that the whole concept of this place, even though theoretically it's only like 3,000 years old, to me,
that's not true.
most of it is much older than that. And I think the dynastic Egyptians found it, maybe enlarged it. And I think they brought in some of the boxes that they found elsewhere, and they even made some of their own boxes. But I do think that its origin is much older.
So when you were traveling around from these different locations, obviously these are pretty vast distances. How would you travel from place to place?
Oh, there were two main ways of traveling in Tantal. One was through submersible, which was like a fishy-shaped submarine, and the other was a flying technology, which, as the various eras progressed, it became more and more advanced, till the point that it's, to me, when I hear about UFOs, I think about the ancients. And in my opinion, some of the UFOs are in fact people who are still alive today from the time when I was alive, and they've got pretty advanced technology. So that's just my opinion. I have no evidence to substantiate that.
No,
And
we both have a very strong feeling about that, though. Iran is still walking around somewhere. And my suspicion is that he's somewhere either in contact with or in something like Telos or Agartha inside the Earth. Because there's no way he could not be in contact with those kind of advanced technologies.
yeah, well, that's not something I really know about. I can only theorize.
Well, given that you have vast personal experience, through your regressions and everything like that. I mean, it seems fair to be able to postulate on these things, because like I'm sure things come to you and it's like they're clear as day, but then there's little gaps in between.
Exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. And I feel like I'm putting together a giant jigsaw puzzle. But one of the things about my personality is that I'm a bit of a skeptic, and I like proof. I like evidence. And so I find myself reading ancient manuscripts and trying to educate myself in things so that I'm not just making random assumptions. I like educated assumptions. And I guess if I was somebody else listening to me about what I've seen, I wouldn't believe them. That's how skeptical I am. But I mean, I didn't even believe myself for a long time. So I want evidence. That's what I'm going out, traveling the world, looking for evidence. And
Well, and
I'm
that's
pretty good
smart.
at finding it.
This layers into something that we talk about sometimes when it comes to just spiritual enlightenment, things of that nature, just in general. It tends to be, the ability to balance the things that you know and experience, and how to properly integrate them into your life in a meaningful way,
Yeah.
and not have it, because if you have an imbalance in that, then you sound crazy. It's sort of what it
Yeah.
boils down to. But when you properly are assessing this and you understand this is, this regression that I had, and now I'm just trying to make sense of it, and I'm not letting this rule my current existence. That's a totally sane and proper way to go about it. So kudos to you, because not everybody could do that.
Oh, thank you. But, there are some of these regressions that are to me, seem so radical that I just put them to one side, and I think I'll come back and assess that at another time and work on something that's easier for me to prove, and actually work out if there's some logic to it.
So what have you in your own research following your experiences? What do you feel you have been able to substantiate out of what you recall?
Well, certainly my time in Egypt, I've been able to work out which locations were from a more ancient time, and I've been able to see which ones I've actually seen before. One of the big things for me was that on the Giza Plateau, from a certain angle, I saw another pyramid, let's call it a fourth pyramid, but it wasn't a true pyramid. It was very big, but it was a pyramid base with a massive obelisk sticking out of it. It was in two colors. It was bright yellow and black. So it was the black part was basalt. And I remember in this dream regression, I was near the Sphinx and I knew which direction I was looking in. And so I tried to triangulate where it might be. And so I hired a couple of those quad bike things, and I headed out into the desert with a friend of mine, and we basically searched using the triangulation that I'd done. And I came over this sand dune, and I saw this pile of very bright yellow rock that had been quarried, and very black basalt that had been quarried. And then there was a shaft, quite a dangerous shaft, because it was just there in the middle of the desert, this big hole, and some of the sand had gone
Wow.
in. And so I found it, and that was one of the biggest verifications that I'd had. And then I went looking to see where this black stone and yellow stone had actually been used. So I went into old Cairo, at the oldest parts, looking at the oldest buildings there to see if I could find the yellow stone and the black basalt. And I found a lot. So,
Wow.
that was one of the biggest proofs for me.
In front of the Great Pyramid, don't they have a bunch of basalt on the ground that's laid out flat?
The one part of the floor is solid basalt. Well, what's left of it. Yeah. And you can see a lot of the tool marks from the ancient technology there as well, which also blew my mind, because it had to be pointed out to me by the guy that I was with. He's also a YouTuber by the name of NEXT. And he was pointing out all these things. I'm going, yes, I know how that was done. Yes, I know how that was done.
So maybe you can help us with this. How did they cut the stone back in the day? Did you understand that one?
Yeah, I have made some very long episodes on that.
Oh.
It's all vibrational technology, and it has to be a very exact frequency vibration. And it's like it's like tuning, like if you had a safe and you had to get the number exactly right. It's a combination of frequencies that you just have to get spot on. And so some of the old technology that it was left over in Egypt was found, in my opinion, by the dynastic Egyptians, and they were able to utilize some of that technology quite primitively. In one dream, it was hysterical to me, hysterically funny for me, because they had worked out that if they used a certain frequency of the tuning fork, they could hit a rock with it, and with what they'd found, and it would raise up into the air. They would push it along very carefully, and then it would come down slowly, and then they'd whack it again, and up it would go, and they would move it slowly, and then it would come down, and then they'd whack it again. And so they had actually found residual technology, and they were using it. And then when I looked up to see if there was anything like this, there's actually, I think it's Herodotus or one of those ancient historians had actually seen them doing it. So another bit of proof for me.
So let me just say this: do we see all the tuning forks that they have on the hieroglyphs, and they have crystals on them? So if they just hit the resonance on one of the crystals, that forms like say it's a quartz in there, so it'd be 6 of them in there, 6 frequencies. If they hit one, it'll resonate all 6 because they're all within resonance of each other. They're all the same key, the same octave. You know what I mean? In building that scale. So if that's true, then we have a shaft that has any kind of crystal in it. We can attenuate the frequency from the tuning fork itself.
That would be nice, but I haven't come across anything yet that I could do that with. But not that they would let you get your hands on it anyway. But
oh, it's okay. I'm working on it.
okay.
We could take a tuning fork, turn on a transformer. I could take Tesla coils and turn on all kinds of different things with no primaries on them. Just turn on the frequency themselves, and things start to just work. So,
well, the actual old technology that I've seen in the dreams, the way of using it was nothing like what the dynastic Egyptians managed to work out. They were actually quite ingenious with the fact that they could even get that far with it. But using it from the ancients' perspective, the frequency and everything was just automatically provided to the thing that they needed to lift, and it was just so easy.
mm-hmm.
Everybody wore these strange wrist things. I mean, they look a bit like a watch, but many times I've woken up while operating one of these things, and I've seen myself with my hands looking at this wrist thing. Let's see if I can get. It's just a watch, obviously. And I'm doing, and I'm fast asleep, and I wake up from the sleep, and I'm doing this sort of thing, operating this watch, this wrist thing, with my other hand. Really weird.
So what functionality did the watch have?
Yeah, Nathan, I just sent you an image of that. If you want to bring it up.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Okay, I've seen those before.
Lost me. Right. Am I supposed to be able to see something?
Give me 1 second. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other night. I was talking about the technology they had. And
yeah.
The wristwatches, they're basically technology. They are.
Oh, yeah, yeah. They didn't all look like that, but some of them did. There was all types of different types.
And out of this came out an image from it. So it was like a 3D image that popped out of it that you...
No, there was no image that came out of it. Somehow in my mind, I just knew exactly what it was going to do for me because of the message that I gave to it. Yeah, no 3D images, no virtual reality, nothing like that.
So like connecting
simple.
through resonance or something, like some kind of like resonance system where they're interconnected.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like Keeley, John Worrell Keeley's technology. He was able to turn on and off his technology just by thinking it or saying certain words in his mind. He can activate his tech.
That does make sense to me. Yeah.
It's like ancient Wi-Fi,
Yes. But
working
when
on
you
the same
think about
principles.
the ancient technology, I mean, everything was through the radiant energy that which is natural in the world anyway. Um, and if you think that we can send radio waves and television and everything else today, but in the ancient world, it was all one technology and very simple, and um, everything was interconnected from my perspective.
Very fascinating. So what other-
Frequencies. So hold on. Frequency is a funny thing because if they're not close to each other, it's like two ships in the night. They'll just never see each other. They don't interact with each other. But when you hit the right frequency, they interact with each other. So
Yeah.
I could take frequency and turn on and off offsets in my computer all day long. I can change anything I want to, and they're based on the frequency. And the thing is, you have to change the frequency down low. And we got to get down to the Hertz frequency where everything is controlled in this earth. That's the miss. We're way too high on our frequency. They purposely changed AM to FM and changed our frequencies way out of whack.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's just an interesting concept when it comes to frequency. So when you say, hey, it works on this system here, if it works on this system here, there's a reason for that, and it's multiple frequencies in a row. It's a pattern. That's like a crystal. It's a pattern every time.
Yes. And some of the ancient, what do they call it? Mathematical models. They show these frequencies in diagrams, and it's not until today, when we've got the math to understand them, that we can see that this is a Fibonacci sequence. This is a sound, a picture of a sound, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. These fractal geometry.
Yeah, sacred geometry. That was the word I was looking for.
Yeah. Interesting. That's so cool. So, go ahead.
I was going to say, whilst we're on the topic of technologies, do you want to talk about the helmets and the handbags for a second? Explain what they were.
Okay, well, everything was part of the technology, obviously, and the various headgear was a form of protection, a form of it had the ability to, when, for lack of a better word, let's call them Atlanteans, even though that's not a word that's I used from my regression. When they went out into a more primitive part of the world, it was a barbaric place, and they needed not only to have the energy for their technology, but they also need to be able to protect themselves. And the helmets and the handbags and the pine cone things that you see with some of the ancient pictures, it's all technology that's utilizing the radiant energy. And without the energy available, the technology wasn't available to them if they were, say, off the ley lines, if they were in somewhere where somehow they weren't connected. And so some of the helmets also had access to the energy to enable them to use their technology. It also enabled them to have a form of protection. So if a lion was creeping up on them, or if a person was going to whack them over with a piece of wood, the technology would recognize that and just temporarily stun them, so they weren't going to complete what they were going to achieve. So it's not just one technology; it's many technologies all wrapped up in this one, in these things. And so they say, well, what were the handbags for? Well, they were for keeping the technology and the energies and everything else in them that they needed. I mean, it's pretty obvious. I mean, why does anybody have a bag?
Gotcha. What was the pine cone for?
Oh, the pine cone shape you'll see for lots of different things. But my favorite thing for it was for the collection of the immortality. I'd say immortality, but they weren't actually immortal. They were just longevity, really. There was a plant which I'm looking for, and I think one of my friends, or should I say an associate, who's been searching the Amazon in person, he went over to the Amazon to look for it. And I think that he's come pretty close. He took the diagrams that I'd given him, and he managed to find someone who said they've seen it, but he didn't actually get to it. But there's this plant that I've seen in my dream regressions, and the pine cone thing, you can get the exact right medicine from it to actually help with healing and to help with longevity. So,
Can you describe what the plant looks like?
well, yes.
Do you want me to send that image to him?
Sure.
Okay, give me a sec. Carry on talking.
I think the key is the way it's smelt. So if I do manage to locate this particular plant, what I'm planning on doing is giving it the sniff test because it had a very unique smell, which I haven't smelt on any of the ones that have come close. And quite a few plants have come close during my search.
We've got it narrowed down to about 2,500 different variations.
Oh.
That's fair. So what's the smell that you're looking for in that?
But it would be like me trying to describe sage, you know? And
That's okay.
you
No, if
smell
it's that
sage, you know what
particular,
sage
then
smells like.
yeah. If it's that particular, then I understand. I just didn't know if it smelled like this and that sort of thing. That's all.
No,
No.
it's very unique. Yeah.
So how do you know what you're looking for since it's that unique? Is it just from your
Well,
recollection,
from the
or
smell and from the way that the roots grow, because it also had quite a unique root system, which was very knotted and tangled. And you know, there's been a few. Some of the types of ginseng have looked very close to this plant. And so for a while, I was going down the ginseng route, thinking that could be it. That it was just maybe a type of ginseng that I hadn't come across yet. But no, I'm still in the search for the plant.
all right? Very cool.
But this pine cone thing, if you have a look at an ankh in Egypt, you'll see that the ankh has the bar across it, the bar down where you can hold on, and then it's got on the top what looks like a pine cone, but it's a hollowed out pine cone. It's all the same technology. And when you look at pictures of the shamir of Solomon, which was that device that Solomon used to use to build buildings, it's the same shape. When you look at the pine cone, that's in a massive statue of a pine cone in Rome at the Vatican, same technology. It's all the same thing, just for various different purposes. It operates the same way. It's like a combination lock to frequency and vibration.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to explain to the guys the other night that your lifespans were expanded in sort of two main forms. The first was finding the plant, which gave you approximately 700 years to where within that time you developed the pine cone and the ankh system to expand that to not just increase the lifespan, but bring it back to a DNA prime condition where it's always self-healing to your healthy state.
Yep. And I think that one of the places that this plant and this technology was being kept is a place in Egypt called the Osirian. Have you heard of it?
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible place. I went and stayed in Abydos, and I basically went to Abydos for 4 days, and I just looked around the Osirian and looked at it from every angle that I could, and because in my dream regressions I had seen a very similar place, but not exactly the same. The one that I'd seen was rounder rather than a square shape, but it was pretty much exactly the same concept. And there was the plants were growing, and also the devices, the ankh-like devices, were kept, and there was a large storage facility there. So the places that had this plant and had this technology, in my opinion, are still around, and I'd like to find some more of them.
It's really interesting to think that you know, such a valuable resource could just be sitting there underfoot at any given time, right?
Mm.
So wild
Yep.
to think.
Yep, that's the picture of the plant that I drew.
So
So
hold on.
I'm clearly a very talented artist.
I was gonna say I saw some of those scribbled on a desk one time when I was in school.
No. What was this plant like a tree, or was it a bush, or was it actually like a small flower plant?
So I've seen it mainly as a bush, but it could get, a reasonable height, but not like massive tree height. So yeah, bush.
Interesting.
7 leaves and a stem.
Yeah.
Interesting.
They have one. Okay, hold on. I was just watching the thing yesterday, and I sent it to 8, and it had to do with oh, come on, what was it? The
lily,
what was it again?
the lily, the water lily.
It wasn't the water lily, it was the other one that I sent you. It was one word.
Lotus, the lotus flower.
Lotus. So
Yeah, we noticed.
there's another plant that only is green. It doesn't have all the lotus flowers. It doesn't have everything else. And it's like a bush that grows with it. And it was on that same video that I sent him the other day. And it looks quite a bit like this.
I'd be very, very interested to see that.
Me
So,
too.
I'll while you guys talk, I'll pull up the picture of it and find the spot, because it may not be the same thing, but it was interesting because the lotus smelled like banana or something like that, but they also used it in the rituals, and it was on all of the hieroglyphs. But then there were other ones with it, and that was the thing that made out the rest of the bouquet that they would keep with them. And the green one was one of them, and there was some other flower. I don't remember what it was.
Mm.
It was
Well, there's
just,
multiple colors of lotus as well.
yeah, there's a lot of different colors. So I'll look that up while you guys go ahead and talk. I'll pull this down real quick.
So with all that time on your hands and lifespan, what does one do with 1,000+ years on this planet?
For the betterment of humanity. The good people do.
Yeah.
So I was involved in
the 120
after the
years
downfall.
of school.
Sorry?
Not to mention the 120 years of schooling.
Yes. So yeah, there was a time, especially in the first and second era, that people weren't fully educated until they'd been through all 12 universities. Because it was important to be well-rounded, because one of the scientific schools fed into another one. So, the perfect example is the University of Applied Energy versus the University of Theoretical Energy. So one and the other were very closely related. So people would tend to do when they finished their full series of education, they would then choose which one they liked the most. And in my case, I chose the building, mining, construction university. So I was very heavily into cutting very large blocks and moving them around.
It's very cool.
Just sent you an image of the classic image of the Shamir of Solomon. If you want to bring that up, it's usually referred to as a worm. And then I'm just going to send you another one. Liz and I have been discussing this as it relates to plasmoid technologies that the John Fleischman project's working on with Bob Grenier. So there's correlations between that plasmoid technology and the construction of the worm that's referred to as the Shamir of Solomon. So I think there's some connections there into how to print matter and how to move matter and how to like break atoms up and stuff like that. Okay, that was a reference to the Ankh stuff. There are some people replicating Egyptian-like technologies, and this is one of those examples. It's Egyptian rod with the ring on the end.
Okay.
If you want to jump to the next one. Or maybe the one after that even, sorry. The one after that's the Shamir of Solomon.
Not that one? That one?
Well, both of those, yeah.
So that technology is also part of the cornucopia mythology. You see the same shape because it's the same technology. You know, the Horn of Plenty, that myth isn't a myth, in my opinion.
You do know what that's sitting on, right?
No, what is it?
Those circles? That's your octaves, that's your scaling, that's everything. That's the a sacred geometry that Bob Grenier talks about. It's all the same thing.
That makes perfect sense.
That's how I modeled that image. I just did that at SketchUp as a brief thing. The 6 rings are just simple rodent coils to represent the idea of 6 paired frequencies that are working together in a specific ratio from one to the next one. So you have to get all 6 in order to get the programmed responses that you want to get out of it. But they all follow this 33-degree cone technology and the rodent coils and the tapering eye and all that stuff.
Sorry, I got that image for you. Give me a second. But by the way, I'll tell you more about that real quick because there's a lot of information right there that has to do with crystals and how they work. But I wanted to show you this, see if it even came close.
That's not quite the right shape of leaf, but
Okay.
if it's a thicker leaf, it could be related. I would really need to see it. You know, I'd need to actually see the plant and smell it and touch it. The leaves were kind of thickish. They weren't thin leaves.
Yeah, yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. I have plants like that out front where the leaves are really thick.
Yeah, it's kind of like aloe vera. You know, it's got this membrane inside it.
Yeah. And I believe that the original plant probably was. I mean, I believe that if there are plants left growing naturally, they'll probably be at higher altitudes. Just a guess.
Pretty educated guess, though.
So you think the plant was at higher altitudes? That's what you said?
Yeah, that's what I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know if I carry the memory of it, but I've seen the place where Iran was growing this, and there was like, if you imagine a pathway up, a shallow pathway up a very steep mountain, and he was growing it in stages, so there was cleared spaces along these pathways.
Yeah.
And there was a fire pit, and it was maybe sort of 30 foot across, and they set up camps at different elevations in order to propagate certain genetic attributes into this plant. But it had to be done in stages. And I've seen that in my own mind's eye.
Yep, you're right, except for the fire pit. There was something equivalent of a fire pit, but not fire. It was technology, so it served a similar purpose. But other than that,
I definitely saw some kind of stone-looking ring in the middle, or not even the middle. It was sort of about a third of the way close to the cliff's edge in this clearing. Yeah, and that's where you gathered for your food.
Yes, yeah, you have seen it, but without the fire.
So hold on, multi-level, and it's high up in the mountain, and they grow each thing on different levels, right?
Yes.
Okay, they have a ancient castle structure that is on top of the world, which is basically, if water filled up everything, it would still be on top. And I forget what country it was, but in each level, they have different levels of planting. It looks like steps for a giant.
Yeah, like I've seen those before. They're like step pyramids, and they're like,
but it wasn't.
Like
it's
that, but then there's a stairway.
But it's agriculture,
right?
It's step out agriculture,
right?
The reason you would do that is the way scalar breaks out. It's every layer would have a different frequency at that level with temperature. So scalar waves is the same thing as the radiant energy that you get. Okay, so that would grow it, which was going to bring me to another point with the lotus flower. When they tested it, they found a protein spike in it that was different from the one that we have now. And I do farming in my backyard. So if you take the Tesla coil and you run the rod down the center and get the radiant energy that's a cold energy and you put it into it, the frequency changes the plant. It can go from female plant to a male plant. And you can produce different things from it. And that's based on the scalar that I'm producing and that radiant energy. So you understand, we probably had it different, back then, because of the technology they were using. It would have grown different. It would have been slightly different than what we see it now.
Yeah, Nathan, I just sent you an image on how that refers to the growth structures of trees. If you want to bring that up, the higher you go up in elevation, the more different the frequencies are going to be. And part of that, I think, is based on the Benker scale or the Benker lines, which they're similar to ley lines, but at each layer, they polarize. So you'll have one like 12-meter block that's positive, and then the next one's negative. But as you go out further from the center of the mass of the Earth, the frequency gets higher until it reaches an equilibrium point somewhere in the atmosphere where it starts reversing as it travels towards the ionosphere.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So they have a ring right there. So when you look at frequency, there's your ring, right? But then there's a frequency pattern. So each one of those rings is, so say it's A, right? So it starts at the small end at 55, then it goes 110, and then it would go 165. So if you take the original number and you keep adding it to the end, kind of like the 3, 6, and 9 does, you have the 3 plus 3 is 6, 6 plus 3 is 9. It goes in the same kind of pattern. It's building that frequency pattern you're seeing right there is the ring. And
It's the vortex mathematics that's
Yes,
Yeah.
adds it up.
it's
It's logarithmic
absolutely
scale.
crucial for this kind of tech. So, real quick, I just want to tell you when you look at a crystal, right? You see in there the oxygen and how it's placed in the figure. So when it says that there's 6 points, so when you draw the hexagon shape, you see every point of that is a frequency, but it's also the oxygen that's in each one. Oxygen plays a huge role in frequency and how it works. So when you do that, that's why it makes sense when they say, oh, we had to have all the correct frequencies in a row in order to get something, because
Yep.
it's literally that ringing scale. In
Mhm.
order to hit all 6, you have to ring it.
Mhm.
So it makes perfect sense what you're saying with the technology.
And do you know where else I've seen that?
Well,
The the different thicknesses of the layers of stones in the pyramids follow that same pattern.
mm,
It
nice.
relates back to the Euler's number and the alternating powers and roots in a logarithmic scale of the Euler's pattern, or the Euler's number.
Isn't it also in that chamber where it starts to go like this and it comes up like this? All the different distances make out that same scale?
Yes, similar
Right.
principles.
Makes sense. I've seen a piece of stone in Abu Sia which rings like a bell. It was a big stone, and you just tap it with another stone, and it literally rang and vibrated for ages. It was
Lightning. Lightning. Lightning when it hits stones.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the whole thing. If there's a big boulder on top of some others and the lightning strikes that big boulder, as long as it's sitting in that same place, then you can tap it and it rings like a bell. But when you move that stone, it will not do the same thing because the lightning is driving that frequency like that through the whole thing. So it has to have the other components in order to be correct, or it will not ring. So you get it in river rock, things like that.
Yeah.
It'll ping, and then as soon as you move it out of the water, it doesn't do it anymore. You also get it in granite. There is a ancient structure that you could tap the sides of it, and it sounds more like a drum, and things like that. It specifically has to do with the pattern of frequency in it.
I'm
This
not
is
sure
only-
if this was granite or if it was basalt.
Well, it could have been anything.
Remember.
The stone wouldn't have mattered. It's how it aligned everything, how it aligned its molecules as it went down. It did it in a very specific way, because what we don't notice is if you look in the water, all the water pools, it goes from a big funnel to a little funnel. But when you get to the top of, say, like the ozone layer, it does the same thing, but the small funnel goes up. So they're opposite each other. So when you look at it, you're looking at the ring going backwards into the earth at all times. So that's exactly what it created with the lightning.
There's a lot of stones in other places do the same thing, like Stonehenge rings like a bell. The African stone rings, like donuts, they ring like a bell. And there's globe shapes. I think India, most of them were found. There's the carved stone balls of different sizes. They also ring like bells.
Back to the plan for a second, if you don't mind. Sorry, Senator, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Now, I just sent 3 more images on that logarithmic Euler's number scale in the pyramids. So if you want to bring them up randomly. Carry on. What was your next question about the plant?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, is there any correlation that you're aware of between the plant and like the emerald tablets or anything along those lines?
Well, I don't actually know much about the emerald tablets. I do know about the books written by Thoth, but he wasn't called Thoth to me. He was called Tehut. But I don't really know anything about any emerald tablets.
Well, can you tell us about Tehut then?
Right. Well, that's a big topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
that's one I'm interested in personally. So,
okay. Well, Tehut, he came into our civilization at a time when my brother just started developing the technologies. And basically, my brother was looking for a new place for our whole civilization to move to because we were suffering from this group of nearby primitive people who would randomly raid our where we lived, run through the place naked, screaming and yelling, and do unpleasant things if any of us was caught out in the open, steal whatever we had, and it was very unpleasant. And so he was busy looking for a new place for us to go to and develop our civilization more because he was getting this technology together. And one of the earliest technologies was the flying technology. So he was traveling around looking for somewhere, and he came across this place, and he could see a tall tower, and he could see a city. And he went and had a look from the nearby hills. But what he saw was very sad. He saw people basically carrying bodies to a big pit, and it looked like most of their people were dying. And he thought, well, he better not get too close in case it's some kind of disease or whatever. And so he was in the process of leaving, and he saw this man nearby to where he was also watching the civilization from a nearby hill. And this guy started waving to him and begging him to come over. And he decided it probably wasn't a safe thing to do. So he took off and was going to leave. But something made him return. He just felt such guilt and such sadness for this guy that he went and collected this man. And this was Tehut, and Tehut had actually returned to this place after having been away, and he'd been studying at some other location under someone called the Great Teacher. And he'd returned, and he'd seen the same thing as that my brother Uran had seen. And he was also of the opinion that he shouldn't go anywhere near the place. So my brother took him back, but didn't go straight to our village. He took him to a cave and just hung out there together, kind of get to know him, see if he was a safe guy to introduce, and also to see if either of them basically died. If they got whatever was going on in this very sad place. And they got on really well. They were both genius level, and Tehut became a very big part of the way that the civilization developed. And much later on, when it was deemed safe to return to that area, the two of them went back and they collected anything they could that might have been useful in terms of knowledge. And but that was how Tehut, who wasn't part of Tantal, became a fundamental part. He then went on to marry my grandmother, which is another story altogether. But yeah, so his knowledge was incredible, and the combination of him coming from this other civilization with some knowledge, and I have no idea what that civilization was, combine that with the knowledge of what Uran was coming up with naturally from just being a genius. Uran was the kind of like Tesla level thinker. And between the two of them, they just, the technology and the civilization just mushroomed from there. But when my grandmother was accidentally drowned, killed in the Nile, Tehut decided that he didn't want to continue living, and he was just going to write in books all his knowledge, and he wasn't going to take any of the longevity anymore, and he was just going to pass away. And he wanted to join her. And so I have these memories of him in underground passages, busy writing out all these books. Some of it was like a physical book, and some of it was somehow getting it into a crystal. But he was just so determined before he passed on to write down everything he knew. So that's Tehoot in a nutshell, really.
Well, that falls into place pretty well with, you know, what's known of him. So that's pretty incredible.
So I don't know when he started getting called Toth or Hermes Trismegistus or any of that, but he was always just Tehoot.
Well, I think that the, you know, story with it kind of goes that it was all him, but in incarnated versions of himself throughout different points of history. But similar to your circumstance, you know, rather than enter into a new life as a clean slate without much of any recollection beyond maybe something subtle, you know, he just kind of always picked up where he left off.
Okay.
Interesting.
I don't know about any of his other lives. I think he died maybe 1,000 years or so before I did. So, yeah.
How long were you alive back then?
30-odd thousand years.
Oh, was 30? I thought you only lived to like halfway through the second era.
No, I left halfway through the second era. I didn't die. I died during the reign of Akhenaten. And, you know, I'd gone to Egypt because there was an awful lot going on there, and I needed to find out what the ancient Egyptians were up to. And so I was lurking in the new city, and I was struck from behind by a cart. And yeah, obviously I wasn't wearing the right technology at the time because, yeah.
So yeah, that kind of answered my question. Like, so more or less, being that you have this almost indefinite longevity at your disposal, the only way to, I guess, die in that circumstance would either be by mishap or by choice.
Yeah. Absolutely spot on. Yeah.
Very interesting. So like you know, how does that work with aging then? As far like I mean, there was sort of like that DNA rejuvenation that Sinner had mentioned. Does that play a role as to how your body doesn't age? Like, are you 30,000 years old looking like you're 20? Like, how does that work?
Well, you look like you're somewhere between 25 and 30, but there are some real downsides to it. There's the fact that you can't, your teeth will grind down even if you're on the drug. So there comes a point where you have to grow a new set. So you go through this medical procedure, and it's extraordinarily painful. I just thinking about it, it was not a nice thing to go through, but you couldn't continue with the set of teeth that you had, and so every like 100 years or so you'd have to go through this process of regrowing your teeth. And yeah.
How long did that take?
Oh, it took a while, you know, a good few months to regrow them, you know.
Yeah.
And how many years do you get to live?
Well, I don't know how long it's possible.
Forever.
In fact, I personally think that my brother Ulran is still around, and I have had some UFO encounters, and I believe it was him. Not that I think that I don't have any opinion on aliens, but I think in the case of what I've seen, I think it's the ancients just checking out where I am in the world, what I'm doing.
Now, I started to say earlier and ask earlier, but you know, we kind of went back to where we were with the Ankh and stuff like that. But one of the things that we try and do here is bridge the gap between technology and consciousness, spirituality, and all those sorts of things. So in in the time that you were alive, how did those technologies bridge the gap of consciousness and spirituality?
That is a very, very good question, because in the two eras that I was in Tantal, everything was technology based. Everything was a practical use of physical technology. And then in the third era, when the place was taken over by a bit of a mad guy who wanted to be God and made everybody worship him and things like that. And there was overpopulation and there wasn't enough resources, and people were being forced to go to these religious places to worship a guy that they knew was not a god, who was just their new leader. And there wasn't enough education to go around. There wasn't enough. The people were really, really suffering. And when that happened, instead of giving up and being miserable, they took on more of a spiritual perspective, and they went inside rather than the unpleasantness of what was going on outside. And that's when meditation and other spiritual powers were investigated and utilized in order to cope with living in a really, really unpleasant environment. So because I wasn't there during that third era, I don't have a lot of experience except with what I've, when I've spoken to other people about it, and people who after the four who have explained things to me. But
that's interesting, and it actually makes a lot of sense, sort of what you're saying. And I mean, I guess I'm kind of mentally filling in some, putting the puzzle together too, because it's if you weren't there for the third, when spirituality became on the rise, and as you said, everything was kind of practical application, and you have this longevity. It's almost like nothing, you don't have to look inside yourself at that point. You can always kind of be present at the plane that you're in. So it becomes, pardon me, it becomes almost irrelevant and undiscoverable. Like, you can't necessarily discover something that's not apparent in its use, right? When you're of such a logical mindset. So that makes total sense.
Yeah, I had a question on that, actually.
Yeah.
Do you think the spiritual evolution by itself was slowed down because the first two eras were essentially a paradise on Earth? Do you think the struggle is what triggered that evolution?
When you talk about spirituality, even though the first two eras were more technology based, the philosophy of the place was what you might call a spiritual one, because the philosophy was to do no harm in the world, to leave a very small footprint, as they say today, to not hurt people, not to hurt animals, to utilize resources that weren't going to be damaging. So even though it was a technology-driven culture, it had a spiritual philosophy about it. And because of that spiritual philosophy, when things turned really bad, then I think it was just a very natural progression to look inwards in order to find your own peace and to be able to cope with everything, all the horrible stuff that was going on.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of modern theological practices just generally are more based around how you have to be here for when you die. And obviously that being less of a concern, in the days that you're talking about, but obviously people did die. Was it known or believed at that time as far as what happens after you pass? Like, was it just something that's factually known and that's what it is, or was it some type of belief of what happened?
It was a belief system.
It was.
So the belief was that when you die, you can reincarnate, but you can't reincarnate if your DNA is still active in the world. So people who didn't want to come back would have their bodies preserved so that the DNA didn't degrade, so they didn't have to return. And others who wanted to return would just let their bodies be cremated or go into the ground and just so the DNA was then no longer there. But if there was any portion of DNA still active, it was impossible in the belief system to come back. And also, you are more likely in the philosophy to come back again if you've had children, because there is a very strong pull of there's a genetic pull from having children. I have no children because I have no intention of ever returning. And I told that to my parents when I was very small. I said, there will be no children because I do not intend to come back again. And of course, they didn't believe me. But, oh, you change your mind when you get older. No, I didn't. Because it's still my philosophy today. I have absolutely no intention of returning and getting reincarnated. So I have had no children because I have no link back, no genetic link back to this planet. So I don't know if I answered the question because I kind of
No,
deviated a bit.
you totally did, and I mean that also explains, the preservation and mummification and all that sort of stuff, and it makes total logical sense, especially if you look at it through the perspective of DNA being some type of physical code that kind of is the nail, metaphorical nail that hammers your spirit to your flesh,
Well, I
So
wouldn't say it's a code, Nate. Joe, sorry. It's the frequency. Your consciousness.
I mean, I'm using it again. It's metaphorical, as far as what I'm saying, but it's not really a nail either.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a perfect answer. Thank you.
You also had technology to create food, like a replicator system.
Yeah, but it wasn't a replicator. It was using the frequency and vibration in order to pull molecules together to create a very standard kind of, let's call it a bun, for lack of a better word, which was nutritious and actually very nice. And the first time I tried a Madeleine cake, do you know Madeleines? I was so excited because it tasted so similar to one of these funny little buns that came out of one of these cornucopia kind of replicators.
It's interesting, right? It's like a food accumulator. It just accumulates into something that's crazy.
But it really is very delicious and had kind of a honey taste to it.
Are you familiar with like manna or anything like that?
Isn't that supposed to be powdered gold? I don't really know much.
I'm not really. I don't think anybody really knows. It's mentioned about in all sorts of biblical scriptures and all throughout, history and stuff all across the globe. But I don't think anybody really knows what it is.
I think it's chi. The mana, prana, ki, chi. They're all, I think, talking about the life force potentials.
Yeah, they made mana sound well, and you got to put it in perspective too. I mean, when they talk about nourishment and things of that nature, mana usually comes up. But things could be nourishing other than food, I would suppose. So
if we're talking about food to keep people going. I think the stuff that I've been talking about is probably the most likely candidate.
Hmm.
And I have done several episodes looking at the technology of the Ark of the Covenant, but I didn't delve into mana very much. But I think that's something that would be an interesting one for me to look at a bit more closely.
So here's an interesting question. You know, seeing as they were so advanced, and I think advancement and technological advancement looks super different. You know, from now till then, even if they're so much further ahead, let's just say, right? But what are some like societal similarities like that we might recognize today and feel comfortable with? Like, are there restaurants? Do you go out and eat? What's that like? Is there, you know, music? Like, what's the enjoyment of life like?
Okay, so in Tantal itself, there was a university of enjoyment, and that's where drug use, food enjoyment, anything, art, creative things, everything to do with that sort of. There was no stigma with anything there. As long as you weren't doing anything bad to anybody else, there was no problem whatever you did. But in terms of restaurants, people, they didn't cook, they didn't eat at home, except, you know, that little machine if they needed some nutrition. Everybody would eat communally. They would, when they wanted to, when they didn't feel like doing the nutritional thing, they would tend to go to somewhere like the University of Enjoyment to enjoy food. And there were festivals, and the festivals were very centered around the more original ways of preparing food and on a very large scale. And it was a great pleasure for people that these festivals were all about food. And yes, there was music. Music wasn't like what we have now. It was more of a repetitive like there would be a theme that would repeat over and over. It would modulate, people would join in, instruments would join in, and it would sort of like move. It would get louder, it would get softer, and people would just go with this flow of the way that the music was going, with this repeating underlying theme.
Would
Can't
that be
really
like
compare
a
it to
more,
anything. So
I was going to say, would that be like a sort of live jam drum circle where someone
yes, but
starts the beat and
more, yeah, a bit like that. Yes, actually, yeah, but with a recurring theme in it. Like it was an individual song, but it wasn't a song that had a beginning and an end. It was a song that it just sprung out, and people would just go with it, and then it would just naturally die down, and they'd start a different one, but it didn't have a set beginning and end. So yeah, similar but different.
Now we know where the Grateful Dead came from.
Oh,
Because they can just play the same damn song forever.
all right, I didn't know that. Similarities in culture. I think one of the things that I see getting more and more popular in places like Japan is people dressing up in anime and actually living a lifestyle of every day going to work as an anime kind of
character?
Like a character.
Yeah, character.
Right. Like cosplay.
Yes,
So to speak.
like cosplay, exactly. So I'm quite into steampunk. I think it's good fun. You know, you dress up in Victorian clothes and you pretend that technology is all steam based, and it's good fun. And if I were to do that every day as part of my lifestyle, that I would be wearing Victorian clothes and acting in a steampunk way, it would be more like what it was at certain times in Tantal, because people would have themes. There'd be some people who only ever liked wearing purple, and there'd be other people who only wanted to be around similar people who like to wear a certain type of clothing, and it was the nearest I can describe it to is the way it is in Japan, where it seems to be evolving in Japan, and maybe it's evolving a little bit in Korea too. I think South Korea, that people are in their normal way of life, they're cosplaying, and yeah, that's
Right.
something.
So it's sort of like the equivalent of just any given like subculture where they're they've got their own individuality. That's what they go with. That's what they are all the time. Even if it seems like different, extreme, or caricature, you're
Yeah.
just kind of roll with it. Gotcha. That's interesting.
Mm.
I can imagine a sort of Princess Disney World kind of theme for a lot of people with pinks and lavenders and those sorts of shades as well.
Yeah, if you can imagine it, it would have probably happened already, because people would get into little cliques, and it was a form of entertainment for them, and imagining these different outfits and getting them created and that sort of thing. It yeah.
Did people get like
With fun.
married or anything like that? That just seems like an awfully long sentence.
Married, right? Yes, but not in the way that we do. People would bond, and if they were going to have a child, they would have to commit to staying in that bond until the child was 20. So that's kind of the but people would bond and they'd live together, and being unfaithful had very serious social repercussions. People really, if you didn't want to be with someone, you moved on. You didn't play around.
So I have a question. Are all the buildings stone back then, or was it metal, or what did it look like?
Not much metal. The majority were stone. I have seen some wood used in the earlier eras, the earlier times, but predominantly stone. And the reason was that it was stone and it was done in very, very large blocks, was because the people lived so much longer that why would they want a building that would fall down in 100 years or 200 years? They wanted something that was going to last 1,000 years or longer. So it was done in very large pieces of stone.
Interesting.
Do you know if there's any surviving replicas of a single residence in stone?
No, I don't think. There's nothing that I've seen that's a replica of a residence.
Okay.
Oh, I got a question.
Yeah.
Between Egypt and the Eye of the Sahara, where all that sand is, was it once a city in there?
There was many cities in there. It was green and lush and beautiful. And there were massive waterways throughout that whole area. And there was a really big lake filled with a lot of beautiful wildlife and stuff.
Interesting.
Was there any unusual wildlife or non-human type forms and stuff that we would just be completely unfamiliar with today?
Only the megafauna that was made extinct during the end of the Younger Dryas, such as saber-toothed tigers, mammoths.
No, that makes
but no like unicorns or anything like that. Like I'm not trying to be facetious. It's just like I might as well ask.
There was a unicorn.
No dragons. Nothing. All right, fair. One. Listen, I can hope. Right.
Yeah. No, I can hope too. I think that would be lovely.
Dragons are real. I've seen them. I've got pictures of them.
Okay. Well, here in New Zealand, we've got something called a tuatara, and I think that is very dragon-like. I think it's one of the most beautiful lizards, and it's much loved here.
Well, do you know the dragon from How to Train Your Dragon, the animated films?
Yeah.
The Night Fury. is a real
Yeah.
thing. Only the ones I've seen, they're much, much smaller. They're like a couple of centimeters, maybe a couple of inches.
Okay.
But I've got pictures of 2 of those in the one picture.
Nice.
Right. I've seen some amazing lizards in Australia. They've got one with a frill, and when you go anywhere near it, this little frill pops up and goes doo 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 doo, like you see in I think they put that frill in one of those dinosaur movies as well.
Jurassic Park.
Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is a real little lizard with a frill, and it's really cute. And you're just walking around in the bush, and this lizard goes frilly, 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 frill. It's so cute.
Okay.
But my most weird experience with a lizard was one of these giant, I think they're called Goa lizards, really mega big lizards, driving out in the outback of Australia, which you do when you're a Kiwi. You want to have a look around and see what Australia looks like. And there was this lizard sunbathing in the middle of the road. It was very big, really massive. And in the distance, because they've got these really long straight roads in Australia, I could see this truck coming. And this lizard was definitely in the path of this truck. And so stopped the car, and I had a friend with me, and I picked up one end of this giant lizard, and he picked up the other end of this giant lizard. And we literally staggered to the side of the road carrying this lizard. And just as the truck comes by, they slow right down, and they stop and they look at us, and their jaws are like right down here. And they drive off. They must have thought some crazy tourists carrying this gigantic lizard to the side of the road. Anyway, we put the lizard down, and it like wakes up, and it looks at us like, huh? And it wasn't aggressive or anything, and it just ran off as lizards do. And then when I got back to where we were staying, and I asked about it, it was actually poisonous.
Oh,
I was about
wow.
to say, when you described the size of it and just what it kind of looked like a little bit, I was like, that sounds like a huge monitor lizard. The thing
That's
definitely
it.
had,
Yeah.
and it definitely had like what do you call it? Whatever in its mouth. You know, they have bad. Oh man,
Like a tongue that goes.
Yeah, right. But they have it's just eluding me, and it's driving me nuts because it's such a common um
What a fang.
anthrax. They have anthrax in their mouth.
Oh.
Yeah, this is what I'm saying.
But they're only
Yeah.
poisonous if they're
Well, I
awake.
guess I was very lucky.
Yeah,
If they're sleeping, they're not going to be all that poisonous to you.
Yeah.
it's fair.
But, you know,
They're pretty
when you're
docile
carrying
too.
one across the street, and it was heavy. Oh, it was heavy.
Mm.
When you're carrying one across the street, it does tend to wake up.
Yeah, anytime you need 2 people to carry a lizard, it's usually a monitor. That's how that goes.
Yeah. So I'm definitely a crazy Kiwi. So
I got a question. Is there any ancient library that you know of that we haven't found yet or that could be out there?
definitely. There's the myth of the Hawira labyrinth in Egypt, which only recently the Egyptologists said, "Oh, by the way, it's not a myth. We actually know it exists now." I went there, and I could see that the Egyptologists have started work looking at it, digging it up in bits. But I think it's too big a job for them. But if they go down deep enough, they'll find a library.
Is it scrolls, parchment? Is it animal skin they wrote things on? Do you know what it is?
No, it's crystals.
Oh, very good.
Do we have the technology to read crystals at the minute, though?
Maybe
Yes.
not. Hold on a second. I've got something to show you.
I know people have been experimenting with imprinting crystals, and I've heard of the Bible being imprinted in a crystal at one point.
Mm-hmm.
So I know we can do it, sort of, but I don't think it'll be at the same scale.
It's got to be something to do with like a coherent light, you know, like a laser.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've got something here which I know for certain has data in it. I got it in Mexico. I was at the Chichen Itza, and I was going past all these stalls, and this thing screamed at me. And it was in amongst the person was selling tea towels and handmade goods, and there was this stone. It looks like a bar of soap, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are you able to hold it up closer to the camera?
Yeah, sure. Gotta get a good there. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay.
Oh, that's precision machined. You can see that. You can feel that.
Yeah. It's got some chatoyancy to it too. Very cool. Very nice.
Yeah. So it has the most amazing feel to it. It just takes me back in time, and it's obsidian, and it's what you find a lot of the ancient mirrors are made of. Whether it's a mirror from Egypt or a mirror from South America, and it was that Queen Elizabeth I had an alchemist. I can't remember what his name was, and he had one of these. So yeah.
We were just talking about them a couple days ago. We were looking at crystal balls, and Nathan was showing me a couple, and I said, "See if you can find a black obsidian one because they're special."
Interesting.
And you know that real crystal balls are not clear, don't you?
Right. Well, especially the black. It's a gazing ball more than anything.
Yeah. Just a minute, I'll get another one.
All right.
Yeah, Joe, if you have any other questions about that rock of yours, now's probably the time to bring that up too. I did mention it to her last month when you brought it up, but we haven't really followed through with that.
Okay.
Okay, hold on.
It's hard for me to get the photos and stuff, on the live.
All right, what do you got there? Oh, look at that.
So this is what a crystal ball should look like.
That's beautiful. That's like moonstone, it looks like.
Yeah.
Well, very nice.
And so when someone who has certain powers uses something like this, they can it's not actually the stone that necessarily is doing it. It's just that it can enable you to connect better, I think. But it's just my opinion. So
I think it acts as an energy accumulation, that bridges a gap, but also acts as a medium, for, between the higher realm and the viewer. So that then if you kind of project intuition onto it, then you have a better chance of visualizing it, because it tends to be the hard thing about your eyes is your eyes are the biggest liar that we have.
Yeah.
So.
Do you remember having any powers in Tantal?
Say that again?
Do you remember having any powers in Tantal?
Like psychic powers?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Is that something that people were interested in or strive for at the time?
Not until the third era. Up until that, people were more interested in because the technology could do pretty much anything you wanted. So it really wasn't until the third era that people started to look at developing their third eye and looking inwards and stuff. So
is there any kind of, well, I know you said that your brother was in the development of all these technologies, and but is there a place that sort of it originated from, these ideas, or the baseline of the technology? Was there a reason that there was such a rift in between your people and all the tribal people around you?
I would blame Tahoot actually, because he was really the only one who seemed to have special powers, and he kept it to himself a lot of the time until much later on, when he was wanting to heal people using frequency and vibration. And by heal people, what he was trying to do was get the more primitive peoples to be more civilized, to not be warring, to want to develop education. He wanted them to have their own language, something that they could easily relate to. And so it wasn't until that part of what he was doing that I actually got to see that he did actually have more than he let on. And so people would talk about him being a bit special, to say, that's a better description. And I think that he was the one that motivated, or at least inspired people to look at these alternative things. But there was a lot of stories built up around him. I don't know how much was true and how much was false. I mean, like the fact that, people said, oh, the great teacher was not of this world. The person who he'd been learning all his skills from, people would say, oh, the great teacher that he speaks of is not of this world. And being not of this world either means they are a spirit or they're an alien. And I don't know. I don't know. So it was all just
There's definitely rumors that connect the idea of Thoth being connected to the Anunnaki, which I think the public has a very poor opinion of. But I don't think the Anunnaki were what most people think they are. They were just an advanced race. They interacted with Earth, but in the same sense that they were triggers for certain steps of evolution. They didn't actually come here to take over anything. They just played and acted the bad guys in some situations in order to create development.
Well, if I actually don't know anything much about the Anunnaki, but if they were real, it would have been in a much earlier era to when I was around. I would imagine it would have been hundreds of thousands of years earlier, maybe even millions of years earlier, when
Do you remember
humanity was being influenced.
Do you remember how many seasons you had? Was it 2 seasons?
I don't remember that being much of a difference.
Okay.
But because I was moving around a lot, so sometimes I'd be in areas that were really cold, and sometimes I'd be in this small temperate zone. But the temperate, most of the place was actually cold and frozen on the planet. But there was this ring around the world that was temperate. But I do remember going into the colder places, and I remember being in the warmer places. But I don't remember the shifting seasons at all.
Right. So it's likely that you only had 2 seasons then, because it was my understanding that it was the destruction of Tiamat which caused the Earth's axis to wobble the 2 or 3 degrees extra, which gave us the 4-season shift. And they've seen that history in the mushroom development as well. And that goes back to the flood times. But then there's other rumors, again, from the mushroom specialists that suggest at some point before that, there was another catastrophe in the galaxy that created a shift from 1 season to 2 seasons in the first wobble.
Okay, it's not something I know anything about. Sorry.
A couple things you said kind of rang a bell for me. About Tahuti, and because when you said that, he was trying to kind of go out on the limb and maybe teach some of the more savage tribal people sort of the way, and enlighten them and everything. I mean, that just ties right back into Hermetic philosophy, which is the entire basis of it all. So I mean, that's wildly validating, I'd have to say, on that subject. but it does raise the curiosity. I mean, you have your whole entire advanced civilization that's working off of more or less, peace and harmony and goodwill, and then you have this whole entire other group of the same species of people, I assume, right? That are just doing something completely different. I mean, was there physical differences between you and the tribal
I've been
people,
kicked
or
out there.
Nope, not much.
no?
Not much at all. And a lot of the people believed that we should be doing more to help the more primitive peoples. But in the first and second eras, there was a philosophy of non-interference. We don't step outside our boundary too much, and we don't we let them do their own thing and we do our own thing.
Was there
Yes,
was there
it's a
ever a
bit of a-
circumstance where they kind of like came to you, to your civilization, and they were open to
Yeah,
joining and learning the way?
there was multiple examples of times when someone from the primitive world had joined our civilization and went through the education system. Some of them returned back to the primitive world as teachers, and some of them chose to stay with us. And yeah, I have done episodes on the dreams that describe that. But I think when it comes to philosophies, if we think about the Star Trek philosophy, it's about as close as you can get to the philosophy of the first era
Hmm.
in terms of, not getting involved.
That's terrible.
I know it really upset a lot of people, especially later on when, and this is going to, I'm actually really embarrassed to admit this about that culture, but there was one stage when the primitive peoples were being watched to a point where it became entertainment for the people back at Tantal. And I was really, really upset about that.
Mm. Sort of like an exhibit.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just so wrong. On so many different levels, it was wrong.
Do you think that there's any remnants of the civilization left today that could be observed either through a certain culture that still exists, or a group of people that still have some of the same practices and philosophies that are remnant of that civilization?
Well, I think all the cultures will have a little tiny bit of it. I think it's only inevitable that that has happened. Let's just look at physical manifestations of what's left. Let's talk about stone circles, for example. They're all around the world, and there's got to be a reason for them, and there is a reason for them because people after the downfall of Tantal, they had to go out into the world and cope with what they had, and some of them didn't have access to being able to connect through the radiant technology. The pyramids weren't in action, and so in order to get what technology they had left over to work, they basically put up these great big stones, which they worked out, the crystal that within them that could enable them to get the power. And so wherever you see stone circles, in my opinion, you'll see remnants of the culture, because it's an indication to me that those people were trying to get the energy for the residual technology that they had.
Okay, but as far as like any leftovers of the civilization, maybe starting up and holding on to some of their own traditions and just being like a leftover part of a population, there's nothing that you see, really.
So at the end of the when the disaster happened and everybody went their own, basically went all around the world to various places to try and start up civilization again. I think one of the places they must have gone is India, because there's a lot of Indian philosophies which I see some very similar to that of the Tantal, especially like the Jains, who have a philosophy of doing as little harm in the world as they possibly can. So, but there's a lot of parallels in South America, but it's just little bits. It's as if as the humans have developed more and more, they've taken the bits that they like and thrown away the bits that they don't like.
Well, I mean, it's
You know what I
interesting
mean?
to say that because, like, especially with like Buddhism being, one of the most prevalent religions, so to speak, in like India. Buddhism has a lot of like tie over of not only what you're saying, but also a hermetic philosophy too, as a lot of its roots, and then just takes it into a theological perspective. So, I mean, that's interesting because that's pretty much, as far as I know, at least, the origins of Buddhism. Very
Yeah,
cool.
I think there is little elements in most religions of the ancient religions that you can just have a look and just see which bits actually can be linked back to the older culture.
Was the were they able to, how do I say it? Were they intermixed between primitive and the Atlantean culture? Were the people able to marry and have kids and things like that?
Oh, that's a big topic. That's a very big topic because in the first era there was very little interaction with the primitive peoples, and there was also, you could only have two children. Well, essentially one child per person, but if you were a couple, that meant the couple had two children. And it was one of the main reasons that the first era ended, because when you've got a lifespan that's that long, you want to have, some people want to have more children. And so imagine if, you have your two children and then they go on and they have each, they have their children. So the family tree is long and thin, but very, very long. And so you're hanging out with your great, 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 great grandmother and great grand aunt and whatever else. And if at any stage they changed the rules, which they did in the second era, to allow people to have as many children as they wanted, then the growth pattern for the population, since they had longevity, was exponential. And what was predicted in that first era happened in the second era. And then the new ruler in the third era took advantage of that because of the misery everybody was suffering. But basically, they threw away paradise because they wanted to have as many children as they wanted. And the exponential growth meant that not everybody could then be educated for all the universities, that there then became an elite and a lower class. There became the haves and the have-nots. And the culture went into a decline. And then once the resources were being stretched and stretched and stretched and stretched, and people were competing for resources, then it became a whole new ballgame. But during the second era, while it was still relatively civilized, people were able to go outside and relate, saying that nicely, with the primitive peoples and have multiple children and even bring back primitive peoples into the culture. And
So,
yeah,
were they just primitive because their mind wasn't developed, or because they didn't go through the culture that you guys did? What was the big difference?
the big difference. Well, physically they were essentially the same, humans,
Okay.
but uh, they just didn't have the history of passing information and knowledge between the generations. So it was pretty much a combination of lack of education and the mentality of primitive religion, whereby they had beliefs that stopped them from developing further, in my opinion.
Like superstitions.
Superstitions, yes.
Yeah, and I mean that's interesting because I mean, you know, history as it's written currently says that humanity more or less was at a total technological plateau for hundreds of thousands of years, and coming from a modern mindset, that becomes perplexing because we live in a society where I pass some of my knowledge and my morals and this and that onto my kids, and that's going to make it down the line. Plus, they're doing their own self development throughout, so there's always some kind of growth pattern, not without setbacks, right? But as individuals progress, so does society. But that wasn't always the case. There was hundreds of thousands of years where people were using sticks and stones, right? It's just sort of how that went. And it becomes confusing as to how that could be. And I mean, right, it would have to be some kind of, if there's no mental cognitive difference or physical difference, it's simply got to be something standing in the way, such as some kind of superstition or belief, like this is the way it is, this is the way it has to be done. We don't ask questions, or else, oh, on the head or something.
Exactly.
Right.
That's how it was. Yeah. And when someone from one of these more primitive cultures was trying to incorporate themselves into our culture, they had to unlearn these things.
Well, the primitive cultures would have been fighting for resources as well, and that would include fighting natural animals. So the lifespans would have been shorter. So even if they had language, which I don't think they had a very advanced language, they didn't have time to pass anything along because they died so young.
They seem to have language, because I do remember learning a range of languages so that we could communicate with these people. But they just didn't seem to have written language.
Right. There's more like verbal stories and passing things along through song, that kind of thing.
Yeah, song was very big with knowledge transfer.
Would you say that there's something that those tribal societies maybe had that was absent in your society that was maybe better or an advantage? Like, I know that's a little subjective, what I'm asking, but like, is there something that they did or had that just seemingly, maybe from your current perspective, was superior?
Well, the only thing I can think of is they had the freedom to have as many children as they wanted to, which from a telltale perspective, that was one of the big things that people were jealous over.
You've mentioned before to me that they also had foods that you didn't have, and you incorporate a lot of that through your different enjoyment festivals. You had
Yes.
like themed nights of different cultures' foods.
Yes.
Interesting.
So, yeah, but I think because food was such a big part of the telltale culture in terms of for celebration and enjoyment, it was something that people would search out to try and find something interesting and exciting, and go to different countries and find a new plant that they could do whatever with. And yeah.
Were there any like symbols or or art or something symbolic that you recall that may carry over and be like kind of enlightening in this day and age?
Oh, well, there are symbols that I see in ancient places that I have this feeling that I should know what they are.
Hmm.
But yeah, I just have to. Well, yes and no. So yes, I think there are, but no, I don't think I can tell you which ones.
That's fair. So, just to kind of try and jar your memory a little bit, I mean, any of the symbols would have been more like sacred geometry or something like that, or just
Oh yeah.
more pictographic, like hieroglyphs.
So the sacred geometry, I think that a lot of the knowledge that Tehut put down for the because he not only just did the crystal stuff, he also did physical stuff as well. But I think that some of the stuff that he would have been willing to let the more primitive peoples know about would have been like the sacred geometry.
And how was that sacred geometry like used? Was it used in like architecture outside of just the regular technology that was commonplace?
Well, I remember it for things like medical treatment and in the machines and stuff like that. I don't remember it being used much in the way of decoration. In fact, most places were more functional than they were elaborate. So there wasn't a lot of elaborate stuff. I mean,
So
it
it
looked
was
beautiful.
sort
It
of
looked simple.
functional architecture, just like whatever worked rather than whatever looks good.
No, it had to look good as well, but it wasn't elaborate. It wasn't like crinkly edges, if you know what I mean.
Right. No, I understand.
But it was all very beautiful. It was definitely beautiful, but a simplicity about it, which it has kind of a clean, fresh feeling about it.
Okay, I got a question. The geometry and stuff like that, I always see the ancient symbols as part of their technology that they're showing on the hieroglyph. Do you have any familiarity with that?
Well, I've seen a lot of things in Egypt that I can link back to the technology. Obviously, there's the flower of life. There's the those like symbols that look like what was on the watches, on the straps around the wrists. There's a lot of symbols in Egypt that I can say definitely look like technology to me.
Yeah. Do you want to mention the Sabu disc?
Yep. So I believe that is a representation or a replica of something that was a piece of technology. But I reckon that so based on my dream regressions, I believe that the ancient Egyptians found these things and replicas were given to them with a functional purpose so that they didn't use them for other things that could have been dangerous. And I think that the disc of Sabu was something that a stone replica was provided to them, which could be used as a lamp.
Interesting. So it would have potentially had other functionality if it, suppose, had been made out of a different material and utilized in maybe a slightly different fashion, but in the form that they received, like the schist disc, like you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
That's only going to serve a single function.
Yes.
Other than its full capability. Okay, that's interesting. That's actually a pretty solid theory, I think. It would explain why the geometry looks so fascinating on it, and why they test it, and it doesn't have any sort of seemingly remarkable capability.
But if it were in, say, gold, and it was spinning, it would have a certain frequency and vibrational powers.
Yeah.
That's exactly
Agreed.
what it have.
Agreed.
They've made 3D printed versions and spun them in water. And what they found was it created a certain vortex in the water that could actually lift mass in the water.
That is true. Yeah, it works like an auger effect because
That
it
makes sense.
bites and chews and has upward propulsion.
I'd love to see that, actually. I think that would be very interesting.
Yeah, I can
So-
send you.
So they have hieroglyphic tuning forks, and in between the two, they have wire that goes in between both of them, and it's on statues, and the wire allows it to resonate longer between the two. Have you seen anything like that?
I've seen systems. So there's a musical instrument used by the ancient Egyptians, which is like a tuning fork with wire between it, and then these little bits of metal, and they shake it, and it sounds a little bit like a what's those little tiny drum things, and you go
I know exactly what you're talking about.
like a tambourine, a cross between a tambourine and a rattle. But I think that those systems were modeled on other things that they had seen and didn't fully understand.
Interesting, because they used to use those in ceremonies and stuff, didn't they?
Yep.
I'm going to call that a tambaraka for now on.
Yeah. Nice.
What about lights? Like
Oh, yeah.
illumination?
Oh, I've got a really detailed memory of being in a tunnel, and there were these like glowing orb things, and if you touched them, they just dropped to the ground and stopped working.
Yeah.
But as you approached them, they recognized that you were in there, and they just lit up. And then as you passed them, and the next one would light up, and then the next one, and the next one.
Yeah. As far as I know, that's a kind of reactive plasma hydrogen kind of circulation system.
Okay. I don't understand why they'd stop working if you touched them, though. That's something that.
Because
Drain their capacitance.
your body has capacitance and will
It would discharge through you.
it'll change you. Yeah.
Nathan actually has experiments showing exactly that effect.
Oh. Okay.
It works on the radiant energy. That's a big part of the culture.
Can't hear you again. I'm sorry.
Man, my internet sucks today.
Yeah.
Try again.
It's radiant energy. Radiant energy,
Yes, radiant energy. I heard that.
that's what they use. That's what the pyramids are based on.
Yes, that's correct. Although, the let's talk about the Great Pyramid. It was built for creation of more radiant energy to serve the population. It was enlarged because the population grew, and so they needed more of it. Then came the devastation, all the moving parts that could be dangerous were taken out, and it was then used as more of a spiritual place to try and get the primitive peoples to be less warlike and more loving and more
In context of the primitive peoples, were the primitive peoples like the Jews?
oh no, that's much later on. Much later on.
Okay, much later on.
Yeah.
So
Fair.
hold on. Now that my internet's working again, radiant energy. It works with crystal, it works with quartz, and it works with sand. And it has certain properties to it that I cannot say during this unless we cut it out. It actually works with the human body to fix things. So it changes things around it. It changes the way the plants grow. It changes the way the water is structured. Everything that sounds like you're describing, it has in it.
Have you felt it? Have you been somewhere where
Oh, I create it.
then you know exactly what it's like. When
Yes.
you go to there's one place in Egypt called the Osirian that I've mentioned before.
It's
And
the one
it
that's
has
underwater, right?
so much of that energy in it. So much. You feel it. And it feels like fresh air. It feels like uplifting. It feels like you're in like
That's what I'm trying to
it's
capture with my
so
organite.
hard to describe.
Feels like fresh air because it's dumping ozone out.
It's not dumping ozone at all.
No, not at all.
It's not the effect. It's radiant. It's like up in the atmosphere. It's like below our feet. It's the same type of energy of the earth. It's
But
healing
we don't
energy.
get it in high doses. So you've got to go somewhere where it's got a more potent dose, or you've got to create it yourself.
So I create the energy, and I can make very high amounts of it and put my hands right in the water and have no trouble whatsoever. As a matter of fact, it's quite nice. And you can light the light bulbs and stuff out of it. And the way they work is on the other end of it, it's the negative energy pulling it through. So when you describe orbs and stuff like that in there, it's working on the same technology as this. It's the exact same like profile I give it, and it's not like anything else, like AC, DC, things that we're used to in our culture today.
Totally different. Yeah.
It builds out like it's like a gas. It builds out completely different. Interesting.
Have you tried growing any plants in that water?
Yes. Frequency, pure frequency. It changes the growth rate.
Yep.
It like 3-4 times faster. So yeah, for farming it'd be excellent. If I wanted to turn something green, the area green,
yep,
just put it in the water. The sand amplifies it. It's a quartz in there that it's actually communicating with. You know what I mean? It's working as the quartz as an amplifier.
Yeah, I mean, you should actually be handing out that water to people who are sick. Not that they necessarily believe you, because people don't want to believe things like that. But it's yeah, it could be so beneficial to people. So beneficial.
Well, they make devices that do exactly the same thing I do, that actually do it, and yeah, it has benefits to it. So, but they don't put a massive amount in there, not in the amounts that you're talking about. But in that Assyrian, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the building that's like half underwater?
Well, yes, it's underground and underwater, and it goes down 15 stories.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the one. It looks all green on the water right now.
Yeah, but that water is still potable. You can still drink it, even though it's green.
And it's still healing as well.
Yeah.
There's your fountain of youth, right?
Kinda.
Yes, pretty much. It's part of it. It's part of a fountain of youth. Not the whole thing, but it's part of it, in my opinion.
What do you know about the fountain of youth?
It's a concept, but I think the water is a big part of it. I think there would have been one of the longevity plants there, and I believe that the water was used to increase the potency of the plant and to keep the plant very healthy. But basically, it was where they kept the backlog of longevity drugs, in my opinion.
I mean, what I picture is something unique, and it's like if you have this structured water in a very certain resonance,
Yeah.
and then you bathe in that water, and the plant is growing in that water, and that's where you're receiving basically like I'm thinking about it more from like a ritual standpoint. If you bring yourself into resonance with the water, you drink of the water, and then you eat of the plant, now you have a complete circumstance, and it almost becomes a baptism, and like that sort of metaphorically, it becomes like it's a baptism. It's the body and the blood. Like that's how
Maybe
I think
that's
about it
where the concept of
metaphorically.
baptism came from.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of a ritual of reverence.
Mm.
And if it's something that you had to do periodically anyway, to have eternal life, which is the whole, you see the metaphor there, it then becomes fully solid as far as the sacramental purpose is concerned.
And the Seti temple, which is in front of the Osirian, you see diagrams of the pharaoh having water poured on him from these jugs, one from each side, by gods.
Okay, who is the pharaoh who changed everybody just to worship the sun god?
Akhenaten.
And he looks funny.
Yeah.
You know anything about that?
Okay, so I believe that the whole Exodus thing happened before Akhenaten, and I think Akhenaten actually took on what he'd seen that had happened before, and what he'd heard that had happened before, and so I think that's where all that one God thing came from, and so the reason that he looks weird is because he still had some of the residual technology, but he wasn't prepared to utilize the standard template of a standard pharaoh. Because if you look at the statues, the body is identical. The head is changed, but the body is so identical you can overlay them. In fact, I've done this. I've taken all these statues and I've overlaid them one on top of each other, and the only thing that's different is the head. So it's a template, and it was in the residual technology that some of the pharaohs had, and all the pharaohs probably had it, but he chose not to use the standard template, and he chose to use his own body. But when developing the actual shape of the body, if you think about it like a laser trying to measure something, if you take it low, the bottom part will be big and fat and the top part will be thin. If you take the laser high, the top part will be fat and the bottom part will be thin. So basically, they were using a technology they didn't really understand to create those statues, in my opinion.
So he didn't have that gut. It was just some kind of a.
It was made to look more extreme by the use of technology.
Gotcha.
All right, so this is a little bit of a loaded question. So if a woman is born and she has all of her eggs that she's ever going to have in her entire life, and she's undergoing a normal natural development process, and then she's going to have to be in school for 120 years. So she'd have to have, like, I assume that there may not be the equivalent of, like, I don't know. Like, I guess I'm asking about women issues. Like, do they have to have, like, a child in their first 40 years of life, so to speak? Or
no,
how do they overcome that?
It's funny you ask that. It's been on my mind recently as well, putting a few pieces together. Now, the ovaries carry 40,000 eggs, which if you work that out per month cycle, you have about 800 years of eggs.
Well, considering that when taking the longevity drug, that cycle stopped, I don't really think that it was going to be a problem. So the longevity drug actually stopped people from reproducing because, they'd have done it if they'd, you could choose between continuing to live a long life or having as many children as you wanted to and leaving the culture. So as soon as you went onto that longevity drug, the cycle stopped. So you had to come off the drug in order to get pregnant.
Okay. And how frequently did you have to consume that drug?
I'm not sure because it was kind of erratic in the dream regressions. I don't have like don't have an ability to actually see a length of time reoccurring. So I have like snippets of
That makes
something.
sense, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Probably in the baked goods. You know
Say
what I
again?
mean? Probably in the baked
Sauteed
goods.
in the butter first.
Yeah, it's all in your bread.
Yeah, probably. But after a certain period of time, people started to suffer from headaches because of the effect that, the brain having all these, because the brain is fairly static. And, if you're having memories of 1,000 years, it does actually impact your brain. And so I don't know the reasons. I don't know anything except from the fact that in order to stop the terrible head pain that would develop after a certain period of time, you were given a drug which expanded your cranial capacity. It actually loosened the sutures and it just grew a little bit bigger. And different people's heads grew in different shapes when they were taking this drug. And they would just take it for a short time just to get rid of the headaches. But then maybe 100 or 200 or 300 years later, they might have to take it again. It happened over a very slow period of time.
Wow.
Yeah, these are some first world problems.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
So
makes you wonder, did they look like aliens by the time they were done?
some of them had some pretty strange craniums.
What, did it elongate backwards? Or
Yes, but some of them, it kind of looked like a bottom. I don't mean to be rude, but some of them would elongate like that, and some of them would elongate a bit like that, and some of them had like this shape at the back where it looked as if it was, yeah.
yeah.
They got a little booty head.
Can't really describe it.
Yeah, booty head.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
hilarious.
Luckily, they
Yeah.
don't age, so I assume that they probably weren't having high degrees of hair loss.
No.
At least you can bank on that.
Oh wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah, did they have long hair? Was that a popular theme?
Mostly. Yeah. Men and women had the same hairstyles. It wasn't a big difference between them. Some people had long hair, some people had short hair,
Hmm.
but long hair was popular.
How do they dress generally? You said a little bit about how they cosplay and the colors and everything, but what the average person, what did they dress like?
You'd have to specify an era because it
Okay.
changed so dramatically from the start of when it was first founded through to towards the end.
How about like the
towards the end,
middle era?
What was that?
How about like the middle era, like before things fell apart and after things had developed a little bit?
Okay. So the clothing was like without seams, and it was just very functional. So that middle era, everything was about comfort and functionality. So, but
Was it still
everybody
woven?
throughout that time wore a cloak. You didn't have jackets. Everything was cloak oriented.
Was everything still woven at that point, like from natural fibers, or did you manufacture?
No, it was all manufactured. So it was manufactured using vibrational technology. How it was done, I have no idea.
So I see them in like Roman garb. You know what I mean? I always see them. Is that correct or is that way off?
In the earlier times, it was woven, yes.
So like kind of like long flowing light materials
Yeah.
in the earlier time.
Oh, no. In the earlier times, it was more heavily woven. materials. But as it progressed and the technology got better and better, fabrics could get lighter, and they could be created without with easier means, and could be much more simple.
You wouldn't really require elemental protection after a certain period of time.
Right.
In what way?
Was there like high degrees of like vanity and things of that nature?
Yes. Yep. There was.
Do you want to mention the wings, where they came in?
So the cloaks were part of the technology. So personal transportation, there wasn't like roads with cars on them. So people, if you wanted to go visit your neighbor who was, an hour down the road, you would use your technology to go up in the air, and the cloak would enable you to just float down gently in the direction you wanted to go until you got to where you were going.
Like
pretty
Mary
basic.
Poppins.
Yeah, that's some Superman stuff right there.
Well, no, not really, because it wasn't fast.
So I said Mary Poppins.
The anti-gravity technology was more like
more
a
Mary
floating
Poppins.
suit.
Yeah.
Just kind of drifting along,
Yeah.
but off the ground.
Because if you go high enough, so when you're coming down, you use the cloak just while you reduce your gravitational liability by going up, and then when you're coming down, you just changing that slightly, so you're coming down slowly, and you use the momentum of the air and the flow of the cloak to give you direction, and it's pretty basic, really.
It sounds like a magic carpet, right? Like something it's like to that effect, but on your back, not under you.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that actually brings me to one of my episodes on the Ark of the Covenant, because in the Kebra Nagast, when it was stolen by the son of Solomon, his name was Melechik. I don't think I can say it right. When he was stealing it, it floated on a platform, and they took it through Egypt to get it to Ethiopia. And in the Kebra Nagast, it describes in detail how it was just floating ahead of the people. The people were floating, and the Ark of the Covenant was floating, and it was all technology, in my opinion. So,
How many arcs were there?
oh, many, heaps. I mean, they were part of the whole process of what they were testing in Egypt and around the world. It was a very important part of what was happening during the Tantal eras.
So
I think there's at least 12,
the Ark of
probably.
the Covenant like the one that you're talking about, the one that we all know?
Yeah,
is that like one that like left the civilization, and that's why that one in particular is known and focused upon?
I believe that it was one that was found in Egypt, and that the Israelites took it with them, and they used its power to do things like parting the sea. They used it when they went into battle. They reduced the walls of Jericho by marching around it and setting the frequency and vibration to disrupt the stone. And then when it was later lost in battle to the Philistines, and they took it back to their homeland, and everybody got boils and started dying, and mice started to infest all their their plants and things they were growing in the field. And basically it was such a mess for them that they returned it with a big apology to the Israelites, saying, "We are very, very sorry. Please accept all this gold in the form of mice, and let's call it man parts, phalluses." And they filled the ark with these gold items and returned it to the Israelites and said, "We're very, very sorry. Please forgive us and get your God to stop killing us." And if that's not technology, I don't know what is. But but yes, the Ark of the Covenant was filled with little gold mice, and yeah.
Interesting.
Wow. Imagine cracking that sucker open.
Do you remember when that was powered?
Yeah, as well as all the other things that it
Listen,
was full
I'm
of.
known on this show for making crude jokes. I'm going to make one. I apologize in advance. Talk
That's
about
okay.
cracking open the Ark of Covenant and just realizing it's a huge bag of dicks. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah, it's just, but you know, people say, how can I be saying that? It can't possibly be true. It wasn't in the Bible, but it is. It's in the Ethiopian Bible called the Kebra Nagast, which makes for absolutely amazing reading.
Interesting.
I heard. Was it still there in Ethiopia?
Yeah, it's deep underground in a church near Axum. And apparently Graham Hancock went to visit it. He talked to the keepers, and apparently a keeper doesn't last very long. They get exposed to the power of it, and they die.
Yeah.
It's
No, I had heard that, but I think something had happened, and they didn't know if, like, very, very, very recently, it may have found its way out of there or not. But evidently not. I mean, I think
hope
that
not.
anybody would be damned that took it. So.
Yeah, I really hope that it hasn't been taken out. But I think there's still plenty of others that are around, which are also hidden in safe places. I think that probably the Templar Knights had some of them as well. But
Right.
yeah, okay. Well,
Thank you very much.
everyone.
Hey, thank you so much for coming on. It was wonderful.
Thank you. We really appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right, everybody. That is so cool. That was such a cool interview, man. We're on Wednesday. We're going to speak with her again. And if you got questions, please leave them in the comments, man. And we'll try to get as many answers as we possibly can. There was a couple of ones I was thinking of, like the Sphinx out there. Did it have a lion's head on it? Is there a second one across from it? Those are cool questions I saw out there. The moon, that you got to ask about the moon. Did they build it? That's something cool. So we're gonna have to look at that. I think that was awesome. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff, man, that we need to ask. Yeah. Sorry, I had to make a joke with Joe, saying that at the end. Yeah. Oh, but then again, she told you there are a bunch of phalluses in there anyway, so I guess it was the same thing. All right. You know, just want to thank Bastard Jack out there in the chat. I had no idea what the hell he was saying for the first hour. I was trying to figure it out. Now he actually makes sense. It's actually nice. So, yeah, that was pretty cool, man. Nile movement. Do you mean did the Nile move over a little bit? Was it in another area? Was there branches coming off it? We'll ask that question. Yeah, thank you. It's not just me. It's Eighth, it's Joe, it's Liz. Awesome job. By the way, I put the her channel in the chat a couple times, and here I just want to make sure I do it again. Really cool stuff, man. Yeah, check her channel out. There's that disc that they had in Egypt. You know, the round one, and then you see the little parts, 3 of them, they come over like this. When she started talking about things being in gold or silver or something like that, and it changes the frequency and tune of them, totally caught my attention right there. I was mentioning in there a little bit about the gravity flyer and stuff, and I see if I can't pick up some symbols later on tonight, and I wanted to rotate those. And they have different materials they're in. And the reason I want to do that is because the frequency is different. Now, a lot of the stuff out there that she was talking about, it, if you really stop and think about it, you have 6 frequencies in order to make a pattern. You look at a hexagon, 6 different points where the oxygen goes when you're building a crystal. It's telling a full story. So when we start looking at the ring, got to remember 1 frequency, 2 frequencies, 3, 4, 5, 6, till you get up to the top and then it discharges, right? So start thinking about that when we're doing that. That's the exact way you have to tune the gravity flyer. So you start thinking about in that terminology, it starts to activate things. Now, which frequencies do you want? You see, it's like radio frequency in a Tesla coil. You're going to find where it amplifies at certain points as it goes up. So you just got to mark them down and then build to that. One of the cool things in doing that is we can test it. We can literally take our Tesla coil and hit the first frequency, build a second Tesla coil to hit the second one, a third one to hit the next one, a fourth one. You get where I'm going with this. It's achievable for us to be able to build it. I mean, I built 5 or 6 coils just to test, resonance frequency. I could build that. So, yeah, harmonics and resonance play a huge part. And that seems to be the underlying theme of the whole thing in Atlantis, is once they figured that out, their civilization jumped in technology by a lot. So I think we're going to have to do that. Okay. So, yeah, you guys got some good questions coming in here. Yeah, the whistle of things. By the way, when I tested my gravity flyer here a couple of days ago, I don't know that anybody caught on to it, and I don't know the volume was good enough. What I was doing was checking the piezo disc. As soon as I put it in the right area, the disc itself would sing, and then it would sing as well inside the trigger circuit, where there's a little toroid shape in there, magnetic toroid in there, or ferrite, I should say. And it starts to ring at the same time as the actual disc did. And then when you hit it at the right time, the thing starts to spark over. Now, what is that telling you? It tells you that you're tapping on the capacitor that's built in there, and then it's just a little too close in certain areas, so that you got to back off a little bit so you can get a capacitor that pushes together and blows apart quickly, so you can massively hit the voltage on it. So just for the people who are wondering why I didn't have any audio on there, I was looking for something very particular. I wanted to leave it out there in case somebody heard it as well. But let's get back to the Atlantis thing, man. That's so fascinating. Okay, so fascinating to me that we can listen to all this, man, and get some true insight. Guys, if you know it's possible, you can do it. That's the whole thing here. If you understand something as a possibility, like, hey, their technology was based on frequency. We're starting to see it in our builds. I mean, that's what you got to focus in on. You got to start seeing it that way. If they're telling you something that's happened in the past, we need to replicate it in the future. And it's all over buildings. It's all over everything. So, yeah, the frequencies we look at, by the way, low resonance frequencies, in the hertz. That's where you got to go. Simplest way to find the frequency of any kind of crystal shape, bash it up, put it in water, and then take your oscilloscope and check and see what the frequency is. That's about as simple as it gets, guys. You'll find one frequency, and from that one frequency, you can attenuate where the ring is and start to play with different frequencies that would be in that same area. You know what I mean? Whether it be a quarter wave, a half wave, a third wave, an eighth wave, whatever it is, find out what it is, and then we can start cluing in the numbers. See, one of the biggest things we got to figure out is that number pattern. Once we do, man, the world is our oyster. We can do whatever we want. I don't think people realize that. Not about the power you put into it. When it came to the plant, with this energy, we grounded out the energy. We were looking for the frequency. That's what changes the plant. Once you get the plant to the right frequency that works with the plant, guess what? It grows way faster. That's kind of the point here. It's the energy gets grounded out while the frequency stays. So when you put it in water, the energy is still there, so it excites it, but it also loosens everything in water. Structured water is positive energy, negative energy releases the structure of that water. Therefore, the plant itself can take in more. It's like the plant, how do I say this? The veins in the plant, probably a worst way to say that, but the veins in the plant would open up wider so that the flow is much better so that it grows faster. If you can understand that and see how that works, that's the way this energy is working for every part of it. And yeah, really cool, man. So a lot of that stuff is coming true in the things we're looking at. By the way, plants with this energy, two plants sitting next to each other gets transmutation. It's like putting two different colors of the same plant next to each other, and then you get a third color that just looks awesome, right? Or totally different. But this stuff works like the same way. It's transmutating a little bit. So you may have, you know what I mean, one plant here and another plant here, but they may transmutate together because they're in that energy together. That's something to think about. Okay, I don't have any idea what some of that stuff is right there. Sorry, I'm reading the chat, guys. Yeah, some of this stuff is awesome. So anyway, guys, we got a lot of that stuff come up. Sean just messaged me. He doesn't know if he's going to make it on Wednesday, so we're going to figure that one out. If not, I may just do something on Tesla coils that day as well. Also, Thursday's open. If somebody, an inventor out there, wants to come in on Thursday and share with us and do a live, that'd be cool. If you want to do it before then and do a pre-tape, let me know. We can do that as well. So that one's open, and I got a Friday open. I haven't planned yet. So we're going to figure it out, guys. If you're out there and you want to get in on this, there's a couple of people out there that reached out to me already with some of their stuff. I don't know that they said they were ready yet, but if you are, let's do it. So as you can see, man, we're opening up to everybody, you know, whatever you're working on out there. You know, I'm cool if you're translating stuff, you know what I mean, from ancient Egypt or something like that in a culture. People are always interested in that stuff as well. So, yeah, a lot of cool stuff out there, guys. So, yeah, appreciate all the stuff. Light bulb glows on resonance. You wonder if it's negative electricity in there, which it should be on the radiant energy. Got filled up, and by the way, it'll drop. I don't know if you guys understand granite in this way, but if you put granite in water, it has a, how do I say this? It's not that it has a voltage all the time. Sometimes it does, but it'll be able to pick up energy. I'm struggling for the right word here. But it'll start growing and growing and growing until a voltage is available on it. And then it'll light up a light bulb as long as there's water down in there somewhere, okay? And then as soon as you touch it, you pull all the energy out of it, and then it no longer will light up. It will take quite a long time to get it to recharge. That's some of the energy that goes on in this stuff that you don't really realize. But, yeah, body capacitance, as she was talking about that hallway, the body capacitance where you turn on the light bulb just by walking by it. It's like your Tesla coil when you go by and you have the light bulb next to it, and then you touch the top of it. You saw that experiment I did where I touch the top and the light bulb comes on. It's the same thing. Your body has capacitance. So as you go by it, it changes the frequency of the coil to tune it to make sure the light comes on. That totally awesome that she said that, and the fact that it's doing that. So, oh, what happened to the gravity well? Let me show you a picture. Let me pull it. It's coming together, guys. My foot's been all messed up. It just got back good this week. So I am working on this stuff big time. Just have to give me a second to see where I put the picture at. Oh, man. Yeah, every time I move to this computer over here to do this stuff, it moves on me. So just give me a second. Okay, here we go. So this right here is Project Gravity Well. As you can see, I got the boards all cut. I got the pieces all set in there. I just got to go through and do the last little parts of it, guys. But the rods and everything, the holes in the wood, all of it's done. It just needs some screws on it, and it's good to go. So, yeah, there's this part of it. And then obviously the other card, the spheres in there. As you can see, there's one small one in there, but I have the other one sitting to the side, and I'm going to be locking them in this week and starting to rotate this thing. So, nice. Thank you, Papa. I appreciate that. Papa Bale out there. When your flyer works, reverse it simple. Yet, well, kind of one of the things, isn't it? We're trying to build a frequency pattern in something that's so junky. And look, I know I built it and I replicated somebody else's work. Guys, please understand that's not something that I would have done normally. But I was trying to reverse engineer it, and some parts of it work great, and they get the correct frequencies in it. Some parts don't. And I think that sucks. So anyway, we'll figure it out, guys. I mean, look, some of this stuff, it's becoming so blatant. It's in front of us. Putting the frequencies together and creating capacitance with everything is the key. That's it. We just got to trap all of it in there, man. It's so much simpler than we're trying to make it. And everybody's about the voltage this, the voltage that. Dude, voltage is just a carrier for frequency. Frequency makes its own voltage. I mean, I could prove that every day of the week. It's really something to think about. Yeah, that one disc on the bottom by the just let me say this for everybody who understands that gravity flyer. The bottom disc has magnets on it. It adds weight. So no matter what you do, it's going to wobble. There's no getting around it. You can try it every which way unless you change the plate size and make it a stiffer plate. It's going to wobble. Personally, I hate the magnets on it. I absolutely detest the fact that they're on there. And it ruins the humming of it. It ruins the sound of it. It ruins every part of it. And I hate them. So I think I'm just going to take it apart and do it myself and change it to the way I want to. Because I know what the answer is. The answer is just the frequencies. That's it. There's two parts to that whole thing. Well, there's three, actually. You could build a field, which you have to do. There's frequencies in it, which you have to have. And then there's a lift factor, which is a capacitor in there that, like I was saying earlier, you push it and it bursts out. So, yeah, that the frequencies on those plates suck. Why? I don't care if they're good enough for the capacitance of it. It's secondary to getting those frequencies. So I'm going to swap that out and go for a dead-on frequency. And because I know I can get frequency and distance of the plate, so if I go, say, 6 inches, right, and then I go 12 inches, I know that that's part of my harmonic, right? So it makes you wonder, you know what I mean, is it every 2? Is it doubled? It's probably not, probably the original plus the addition, just like a key of A as you go up. But yeah, that's all it is. That's really all it is. And then there's a capacitance factor. The best thing I could do is throw that whole thing away and start over with the geometry coil. So, but that's neither here nor there. I'm going to go out there and take some cymbals from a drum set, and I'm going to spin them and just check the frequency on them. And hopefully I can get a couple different sizes and do it. And I think we're going to pretty much have our answer on that. So, yeah. Some of the other stuff on it would be pretty simple, man. Once I know it makes the frequency and where it sings at, that's game over. I've already had it. You know what I mean? It's just done. And then you could just basically order them the size you want them. Yeah, it must be harmonic and resonance. UFO story craft resonate at the same specific geometric location allowed it to travel in this place. Look, I think if you've been doing this long enough, you know that the ring is the most important thing you could do. Build it out, 6 different frequencies. You could go up to 8. It's the answer to just about everything. Yeah, sonic geometry. Yeah. A lot of this technology in the Atlantis, like we talked about today, has to do with that. Guys, we're right on it. We know exactly what we're doing. We figured out the parameters of it. And that's why the geometry coil makes so much more sense. And we could try to do it with different plates and stuff, but I'm going to have to really change that thing up and not make it look like anything like the Gravity Flyer used to. And that's okay. I mean, I got 3 of them, you know what I mean, that are kind of the same. So I'll just take one of them and rip it apart and redo it my way and change some of the plates in there, make sure the capacitance is good, and really take this thing to the next level. Let's see. It's all connected. Absolutely. Yes, it is. 1970s called Contact. I think the Bill Meyer story. Billy Meyer. Love the movie Contact, by the way. Also, right here, Stephen G has a channel. Awesome Tesla coil, by the way, on there. I know I mentioned it last time. I'm going to mention it again. Beautiful Tesla coil. Sean took a look at it. He likes it too, man. Doing really well with that. And the AC sparks coming out of that thing, awesome. Okay, just awesome. Let's see. Yeah, the magnets, they're using magnets in the Gravity Flyer for grounding. That's what it is. The whole bottom of the thing has to be in negative. That's what it is. You're making a grounding effect, which would have been so much simpler as a coil. You know what I mean? You tend to attenuate the frequency of the bottom coil to the top, and you got a ground, and that's as simple as it gets. It would have been so much easier. Oh man. Not everything sings the same song. Well, no, every single disc that's a different size sings a different song. I'm already well aware of that. Oh man. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, what is that? The xylophone. That's the one that's like the radio, and you just put your hand over or something like that, and it makes different sounds as you go by it. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken, that's what it is. Could be wrong. Yeah, let me just tell you that they're using it as a ground. And they're using it as eddy current to slow down the disc, because what he's trying to do is the bottom has magnets on it. The top disc has no magnets on it. As soon as you bring the bottom disc up, it slows the top disc. So it puts them in a harmonic of each other. So if one's running at 600 RPM and the other one's running at 1200 RPM, they're in a harmonic of each other. So now they start to have special features when you start doing that. They become harmonically resonant to each other. That was the whole purpose there. I mean, that was something that was easy to find, and that's what they did. And it shows out on everything that you put it on. I'll be honest with you, Papa, I can make that very easy for you, man. You see that Slayer Exciter I do? It's got a couple connections to it, man. If you could solder, you could do it. Oh, my mistake then. You'll have to show it to me, Joe. Something booted my subscription to you, Nathan. I'm sorry. Those ones that we sent out for free, guys, were 30-day trials on there. If that's what you're talking about, yeah, then that's what it probably did. I wish they were longer, but they're not. It's kind of like give you a taste of what's on there, and then if you like it, you can stay. I'm sorry about that. I have every month they give me 10 to put out for free, and I put them out so everybody can get on there and check it out. Building the coil on the flyer, nice. I'm telling you that one Sean and I built, the one you always see in my videos, the 12-inch coil, the 4-inch diameter at 32 gauge wire. That thing is beautiful for putting out frequency, and it's dead on every time. Oh, let's see. Oh, you didn't see the video pop up. Sometimes you got to go into the phone settings or your computer settings and make sure that you have the bell ringing on. So it'll alert you when things come up. So that might be it. Also, John, I want to talk to you, a little bit more. You sent me some pictures of structured water and things like that, and you always talk about it in the chat. So I think when you're ready, that's going to be awesome to have a chat about that. It shows that you were unsubbed for well, I don't know what that's about, to be very honest with you. Hopefully you sub back to it and you get all the notifications and everything. Yeah, I don't play with all that stuff, guys. Let me just tell you, it's like caveman style for me. I don't play with all the advanced features on any part of YouTube. I don't try to get rid of any comments unless you're disrespectful to the channel. Okay, that's the only ones I get rid of. I really care less. You know what I mean? If you want to get in the chat and horse around for the day and have fun, by all means do it. You know what I mean? And yeah, whatever. All I ask is you're respectful of the channel. You don't leave 200 comments on the same video. I mean, it's kind of bad. You know what I mean? And that you don't come on the chat and say, hey, don't watch this idiot. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Other than that, I could care less. You can see it's pretty free flowing. I could care less. Just have fun. That's all I want you to do is have fun. Let me learn something, and we're all good. You got the bell ticket this time. Right on, brother. No, I don't think you understand. I had one guy get on there, and I think I got 100 different different things on a video, and it was like, okay, did anybody else want to comment on that video? I mean, it was like, wow. It was just, I care less if you comment, 5-10 times. And most of the time, I'll figure out what you're talking about and chat back with you. Lately, I've been so busy, man, trying to do all this and then do all the lives and then taping stuff. And we're going late into the night and some of this stuff. So, yeah, it's been a little bit back and forth. So, dude, you are awesome, man. Thank you very much, Ricky. I appreciate that, man. Thank you for becoming a member of the channel. I'll tell you to check out right now Organite's Gone Wrong, or the stuff on the Star Trek. It's absolutely hilarious. You'll have so much fun. But then there's a lot of videos out there that are serious. One of the ones I would tell you to check out is the video on fields, how you create fields around a UFO craft. And that one's awesome. So, yeah, bunch of stuff out there like that. We also looked at Sal Paez, but by the way, he describes Gerald's coil, and I don't think Gerald likes that. So, but it's like, I don't know. They've been at it so long. I will tell you, Gerald's coil is awesome, though. And when I did that Sal Paez video on the Super Force, it was like describing Gerald's coil, which was just ironic, but I don't think he cared that much about it. John, brother, thank you very much for becoming a member again, man. Thank you. You're awesome, brother. It's so cool, guys. I really do appreciate this stuff, guys. I don't think you understand. It gives me a chance sometimes when I'm working on stuff just to throw something out there that, maybe isn't a polished video, but you guys get to see it. Sometimes I'm doing a lot of editing, and I like to throw out there something that, everybody can look at and watch. And then you'll get stuff on there, man, when I start doing things in infrared. Man, you can start to see where everything goes and all the power, and I think it's awesome. But yeah, thank you. Thank you to both of you guys out there, man, for becoming members on the channel. I really do appreciate it. Right on, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. The ZVS, let me just say it this way. I know Sean's pretty precise on this wattage stuff. Let me just say it this way. For every 10 volts, you're using 2 amps. And it's very simple to put it out there. So if you just think about it in that way, and you can calculate volts times amps equals watts. So you say, you got 10 volts, you got 2 amps, 10 times 2 is 20. So you got 20 watts. I don't get into the watts a whole lot because I think it's pretty much irrelevant. You just set it at 10, turn it on, and then run it. And it works perfectly. If you built your Tesla coil, your 1 and 2 coils, right? The thing just automatically, man, works perfectly. So, yeah, thank you. Papa Bill became a member as well, guys. Papa Bill's awesome. If you guys haven't checked out his show, he goes on and takes these pulse motors, man, and he cranks them up. He changes a bunch of different stuff. So, like, I know when I wanted to build one, it's like 500 different things I could do. So watching his channel is totally awesome. You get to learn every little thing about him, the do's, the don'ts, when you blow things up, when things work better. Try it and find out happens every once in a while. So right on, Papa Bill, man. Cool stuff. Lighter won't light up in space. There's not enough oxygen in space. There's oxygen out there. There's just not enough of it. You need oxygen, by the way. If you haven't figured that out by now, oxygen is one of the main things that you're going to need to know when it comes to start resonating things. It's the surrounding around you. It's one of the things that is the atmosphere around you. It's a main component in all of this technology. Life longevity. Yeah, dude. Papa Bill follows the 10 component rule, man. That's what I love. It's if you want to figure something out, it's real easy. Doesn't take that many components. You just get it done. So right on, man. Yeah, Ulysses, if you have trouble on it, just hit me up on my email, man. I can do another video on how to put it together and stuff, but I think the last one was pretty good. There's 2 separate parts of it. But if you buy the parts that I told you to buy, you should be perfect on it. The coils themselves, I went over how they're built. I could probably put it all together in another video if you guys want, and we can look at it. But I'll be honest with you, man. You build that coil, it's going to run a long time. If you're not messing with it, shoving things down in it and doing that, you just want to have a Tesla coil that turns on all the time, perfect for that. Perfect for that. So, yeah, that's right. Less is more. That's all you can take away. Guys, I got a lot of projects coming up. I just finish out the day with this. I have Project Gravity Well. I'm working on my Gravity Flyer again, and I'm building a Tesla coil. Right now it's in testing for 1 megahertz, and that's on a Slayer exciter circuit, and it's actually coming out pretty good. I'm going to show that and then send it off to Charlie C. Hopefully it's the one he wants. And then I'm also going to probably build another one for a higher strength because you can use thinner wire and get there. Sometimes you want to use thicker wire because you got a lot of voltage you want to slam through these things. So I'm going to probably do both. It's not that hard. Guys, when you get up to those high frequencies, the coil literally is maybe this long. It's not these big, it's like this long to get to 1 megahertz. It's less is more on those. Yeah. The less wire you use, the higher the frequency. So, yeah, that's not hard at all. But getting the Slayer exciter, tuning it in just right, make sure it hits the right frequency every time. Just takes a little patience on the number one coil when you're messing with it. So, yeah, I'll show that one and then send it off to Charlie, and hopefully he's happy with it. But, yeah, we got some cool things coming up, guys. Now that my foot feels better, I'm good to go, and I can get working on this stuff. I just want to say thank you out there to the members, man. Again, we had Papa Bale join. Also, Ricky right here joined. And then John joined as well. Guys, you guys rock. I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate everybody out there, and I want to thank everybody who comes in and watches the show and hangs out with us. Monday, 8th, will be back again. We're going to look at some more Organites. We got another video on that. We talked to Liz again tomorrow on Atlantis. So, again, any questions out there, let me know. We can start working on it and make sure we get all the good ones to her so she can go through it. And if it takes an extra episode after that, we'll do it as well. I thoroughly enjoy that kind of stuff, guys. So I'm all in on, doing things that are outside of my norm, which is like Tesla coils and frequencies and stuff. So I'm all in for it. So, and like I said, we got some open spots, guys, if you want to come in and show your project. The last couple of people we had in, man, really awesome DJ, oh, man. Nick came in, DK Diker channel. We also had, oh, my God, Inventor 3 came in. That was a really cool thing. And, yeah, we had some cool people come in, man, and do this stuff as well. But I just want to say thank you to everybody out there. And, guys, I'll see you on the next one. I appreciate everything you guys do out there. And have a great day.